Welcome to the third set of my top 100 board game videos. We're covering numbers 71 through 80 today. The theme for this set of 10 is gateway games, or just games that you play with people who don't already play a bunch of board games. Almost all of these 10 fall into that category, so let's take a look. My number 80 is Micropolis, which is down 2 spots on my list to 80, obviously. Its weight is about a 2, so quite light, and will play 2 to 6 players comfortably, and it generally works at all those numbers. Micropolis is a game about ants. You are building an anthill, and you need the best ants in order to win. More ants is more points. Special ants give you special powers. You're just trying to draft tiles that will go into your anthill that will help improve your chances of scoring the most points. So there's a little bit of set collection, there's a little bit of drafting of the tiles, there's some currency management as you're spending these little military ants in order to skip tiles in order to get one that you might like better. It's just a very straightforward, streamlined game. It doesn't take long to score, it doesn't take long to play, is over very quickly. It works great as a game that you play either at the start of a night as you're just sort of warming up, or at the end of the night as you're cooling down from a heavier game. Honestly, I think I could have used this more in those situations than I have, and I might try to intentionally use it in those situations more in the future as the possibility of running a game night returns. But it's just a really strong game. I like the ant building theme. It's fairly unique. I can't think of another game that has quite this theme that I've played anyway. I think there are other ant-themed games out there. And I think this is a terrific game for just introducing people who don't know a lot of board games into a few of the things that show up in other games that might give them some gaming literacy for down the road. So that is my number 80, Micropolis. My number 79 is Century, A New World, which is down 22 spots from my list last year. Its weight is about a 3, and it plays 2 to 4 players. Century, A New World is a worker placement game set in the Century series. It's not really a universe as far as I can tell because they're historically set. The theme really doesn't matter here. It is all about trading cubes for other cubes using, in this particular game's case, worker placement. So you are putting your worker on a spot. That spot gives you a special effect, and that inhibits other players from going to that spot. In this particular one, it doesn't block the other player so much as it just means that they have to pay more workers in order to use the spot that you're already at, and you also get your workers back to use right away if someone decides to take the spot that you're already on. So less for them, more for you. It works out both ways if you take a spot that they're going to want to use. It's very straightforward. It is quite simple. I think there is some complexity involved in any kind of worker placement game because you have to understand what all the different spots that you can go to do, and that is still true here, but the way it works out is pretty systematized, so it's not as bad as like trying to learn 20 spots in a worker placement game that all do completely different things, which is often where the weight and bulk of most worker placement games come from. But here it's more of you trade yellow cubes for red cubes here, and you trade red cubes for green cubes there, and they work kind of the same way in both spots. It's just a matter of which one you want to trade for what. So that simplifies things a little bit. It's just a great way to introduce people to one of my favorite mechanisms, and as a bridge into a world of games that I absolutely adore, because there are a lot of worker placement games that are scattered all throughout my top 100. I'm just a fan, and this is a game I will happily play with anyone who I feel should be introduced to worker placement games. So it works out for me. It's solidly on my top 100 list, if not extremely high, because I tend to like the more intricate worker placement games better. But this is still really solid. So that is my number 79, Century, A New World. My number 78 is a game called Steam Park, which is down 13 spots from my last list. Its weight is about a 4, and it plays 2 to 4 players. Steam Park is a game that I wish I remembered a little bit better than I do. It's not a game I own, it is a game that my brother owns, and I haven't really played it with him in quite some time. I think it's been several years now. But it did leave an impression on me. It is a game about building a theme park for robots, thus the Steam part of Steam Park. But that is really just an excuse so that the waste cleanup part of it is less disgusting. Because conceptually, it's a lot less disgusting to be cleaning up used oil from robots running around your theme park than other things that human beings could be leaving behind. Yeah, let's not talk about that much, eh? It's a real-time game, at least in part of its gameplay, not the whole thing, where you're rolling dice as fast as you can, and you're trying to pick out a certain combination of sides that are going to work for you for that round, because those dice represent the actions that you can specifically take each round. But the faster you do it, the sooner you stop and just go with the dice that you have, the more of a bonus for cleaning up your mess that you will have. So if you're just really trying to roll the perfect round, that could be a problem because it means that you'll be behind in cleaning up your mess. It's quite fun. There's some special powers involved in the kinds of things that you build. You're trying to collect guys based on color, if I'm remembering correctly. And you're just trying to accumulate as much money as possible, which you can't really use money for anything specifically in terms of helping you play the game. It's just more there to track your overall score. So they could have themed it victory points. And then you just play 5 or 6 rounds of the game, and whoever's got the highest score at the end wins. Perfectly charming family weight game. It's maybe a little bit more complicated than you might want to throw at someone who's brand new, but it's not that much more. It's simple enough that I think with some effort you could get some people who are relatively new to gaming playing it and having a good time. So it's just a really solid game, and kind of wish would have had a chance to have played it more by now, but maybe in the future I will. So that is my number 78, Steam Park. My number 77 is another game I don't own called Downforce, which is up 5 spots from where it was last time. Its weight is about a 3, and it plays 2 to 6 players. Downforce is a racing game, and what you are doing is you are not just trying to finish first, although you are trying to do that. You are also trying to bet on who you think is going to win. So you're going to get measured in cash, and cash, which is in the millions, because of course this is some serious international racing that you're doing, could be given out for first place or second or third. I think you still get cash all the way to 4th or 5th place out of a possible 6. But you also get money for correctly picking at 3 points in the race, and it's worth more the earlier you pick correctly. The person who's going to win. You get some money if they get second or third as well, but you get the most if you pick the winner. And that the person you're picking to win does not need to be a car that you own. Which is another aspect that's interesting to this game. You actually bid for which car you want to race as. And you bid that based on the cards that you have in your hand, which are going to dictate how effectively you can potentially race each of those different colored cars. Because maybe you have a lot of red in your hand, but very little black. So you're going to bid aggressively on red and avoid picking up black like the plague. But maybe black runs out to a huge lead early on, and you're like, actually, I think despite the fact that I don't really have any black cards, I'm going to bet on black to win, and you might be right. And if other people are betting on other things, that might be enough to win the game for you, despite the fact that it's not your car. So it's a really interesting little game that doesn't take very long. The auctioning aspect is a little bit much to spring on people who are brand new to the game, because they won't necessarily understand what differentiates a good bid from a bad bid, especially since you can potentially buy multiple cars. depending on player count, if you're playing 6 players, there's only 6 cars. Everyone's just going to end up with one, essentially. But there's a variation that lets you just sort of have predetermined cars at the start, and then you bet as you go. That might be a good way to play it the first time when you're with people who haven't played a lot of games. But once you can get people up to speed, having that auction at the beginning of the game where you can spend up to $6 million on a single car, which can be pretty substantial considering that I think winning only gives you like 12, so you only double your money that you spent if you win. That's an interesting part of the game and makes it well worth checking out. It's probably a game I would like to pick up at some point when I have the opportunity, because I think I could use it to get people into playing board games that normally wouldn't, especially because it's a theme that I don't really have replicated in other places. I think the idea of a more real-world racing theme is actually going to work for some people that a lot of my other board games with their more fantastical themes wouldn't work as well. So it's really solid. It might go up on my list if I end up picking this one up for myself and playing it more. But for now, it's already quite high at 77. So that's my number 77 Downforce. My number 76 is also a game I don't own, although I may see about rectifying that at some point. It's called Marco Polo 2 in the Service of the Con. It is new to my list. Its weight is an 8, and it is definitely the only game on my list anywhere near that high a weight rating, and it plays 2 to 4 players. Marco Polo 2 is, from what I understand, a very similar game to the first one, which is The Voyages of Marco Polo. Although I haven't played that one, so that's part of the reason why this is the one that's on my list. And this is a relatively rare entry in terms of this is a game I've only played once, and I've only played it online. I haven't played the physical version, but it's a testament to the quality of the game that it made enough of an impression that I thought it was good enough to make my top 100 list, despite those limiting factors. I've played a lot of games only once. Not many of them have left enough of an impression that I just immediately had to get it onto my top 100. Marco Polo 2 is a variable player power, so everyone has an ability to do something that's a little bit different from the next person. Oriented dice worker placement game, so you're rolling dice and those are your workers, and the dice will sort of limit and accentuate the specific places that you can go around the board. But it is still a worker placement game, so you are still potentially blocking or limiting the places that other people can go. There's a really interesting duality to the game where you're going for resources on one part of the board and you're kind of going on journeys on the other part of the board, but those journeys that you take can affect the rate at which you're getting resources on the first part of the board, or some open up some spots that you normally couldn't go to as you wander about. And it seems like those can change from game to game. There's just a lot of elements that I really like about more complex, meaty games that are in this one that I am eager to come back and play this. Because this is supposed to be similar enough to the first game that you theoretically only need one, I'm probably going to try to get my hands on a copy of Marco Polo 2 rather than the Voyages of Marco Polo. Because that seems to be A, more available right now, and B, might as well take the game that has at least slightly refined the original formula. I just really want to play this again. I might have to make some excuses to get people to play this with me again. I just really want to have people in my house playing this game with me at some point. That would be fantastic. I don't know how long till we get there, but it's something I'm certainly looking forward to, and this one certainly could rise, or who knows, maybe I'll completely lose interest in the game, but I don't think so. I think I'm going to like this one for a while. So that is my number 76, Marco Polo 2 in the Service of the Con. My number 75 is Biblios, which is up one spot. Its weight is about a 2, and it plays 2 to 4 players. So another game that's up slightly rather than down. Biblios is terrific. It is absolutely themeless. It is a very light auction game and set collection game that has supposedly something to do with monks. I'm guessing in the Middle Ages, collecting books and denigrating or burning the certain books depending on the cards you play. Doesn't even really make sense because I don't think monks in the Middle Ages were burning books left and right, to be honest, unless they were like out and out black magic, essentially. I don't know. It plays in two halves. The first half, you look at a card and you have to immediately decide whether to give it to yourself, to give it to one of your opponents, or to put it into the auction pile for the second half of the game. Each player does that with a certain number of cards, depending on the number of players, and they keep doing that until they've gone through the whole deck, which means you're going to have a set of cards to start from, and you're going to have some cards that are going to be bid on later. And your opponents will also have picked up some cards depending on what you gave to them. The cards are in one of 5 different suits, and those suits will have varying point values for having the most of that suit, depending on certain cards you play, which will either buff or debuff the value of each card. And in the second half, you bid for it using money cards. You can bid whatever money you want, but you can't get change if you have like 2 3s and you bid a 5. You got to pay both 3s in that case. You can't get a 1 back and change. Pretty straightforward. It's very comparable to a game like For Sale, which I can't remember whether or not it's been on my list yet, to be honest, but sorry, spoiler alert. The difference is this one plays 2 to 4 players, For Sale plays 3 to 6. So my preference on what I want to play actually usually has more to do with player count if I want to play this type of game, rather than the game specifically, despite the fact that they might land in very different places on my list. It's really good. The push your luck aspects with the auction aspects just both combine well. You can definitely put yourself in corners where you just run out of money to bid with and let other players basically buy what they want for the rest of the game if you really just blow all your cash on like 1 or 2 purchases. I tend to win, but I also tend to be pretty good at auction games in general, so that might be part of it. It comes with these really nice colored dice that just track score. Like, it just means that each suit can be worth between 1 and 6 points, and they just sort of sit there and let you know that brown is worth 5 while blue is only worth 2. That's all they do. So if you want to really disappoint a Ameritrash gamer, you should pull this game out, show them the nice colored die, and say, and these are going to keep track of how many points your sets are worth. So that's Biblios. Really solid game. Would recommend it for new players for sure. Just breeze by the theme. Even if they're the kind of person who would be into monks in the Middle Ages, it's not going to help here because it's so, let's say, lightly integrated. That's my number 75, Biblios. My number 74 is Magic Maze, which is down 12 spots. Its weight is about a 2 and plays 2 to 6 players, although 2 can be a little tame. It also technically plays solo, but just, I think you can safely ignore that. It says up to 8 players on the box, which I think is just kind of madness. No, keep it 2 to 6 and probably 3 to 6, really. Magic Maze is a cooperative game that tends to do something I like in cooperative games, which is that it limits communication. You normally cannot talk to your teammates about what you're going to do. You each have a tile in front of you which indicates what you're capable of doing, and what it tends to do is only one player is able to go north, only one player is able to go south, 1 west, and 1 east. And there are also a couple of abilities on the map that are only available to a specific player as well. So only a certain player can go up or down escalators, for instance. Another one is the only one that can reveal new tiles. But you can all move the main 4 pawns on the board, which are corresponding to 4 sort of fantasy races, which are in a mall for some reason. I don't know. It's not a abstract game per se, but its theme is a little odd. And you're doing this against the clock because there's a sand timer, and the sand timer runs out, and you haven't done something that lets you flip the sand timer back to its other side. You just lose. So you have to try to get your tasks accomplished as quickly as possible and use the chances that you have to flip the sand timer to get things going in your favor. This is just a really fun party game that I think works maybe not for as wide a range of players as it says on the box, but a pretty wide range of players. You can play this with fairly young children. There is the ability to talk on specific places when you stop there, and then you can talk until someone starts moving someone again, which is like, so you can say, okay guys, here's our plan. We got to talk now because we're not going to be able to talk in a minute. So let's figure this out now, and then go back to do it and back to silence. There's also something in the game called a do something pawn, which is just a big red pawn that is how you communicate to someone that they're supposed to be doing something. You can't point to where they're supposed to be doing it. You can't use any sort of verbal communication, really. All it says you can do is you can put the do something pawn in front of a person who's supposed to be the one doing something, and you can stare at them. That's literally all you can do. And it's actually really funny as a result. It's funnier the more dysfunctional your group is. Like, the less capable you are of working this out, the more funny it becomes, in my opinion. Although maybe just to me, maybe your group will just get really frustrated. But it also makes it immensely satisfying when you can figure out how to navigate the game properly. And it has this cool system where it adds additional rules depending on which, you go through a series of scenarios and it gradually adds new things and new rules and stipulations that sort of modify the challenge and make it more complex than simply getting guys from point A to point B and then point B to point C, which is essentially how it starts. It's really cool. This may not have the depth of some of the games in my top 10, but there's something to be said for something that's just really this successful. So, that is my number 74, Magic Maze. My number 73, and unfortunately there's no 9 in the title, is number 9, with no U and no E. It is down 45 spots, its weight is a 1, and it plays 1 to 4 players. Okay, so here's the deal. Some of these games are just down like 8 spots, 15 spots, 20 spots. That's not that much. This is definitely taking a tumble, and I think it has more to do with I have a hard time getting my head around how much I do or do not like this, rather than specifically cooling on the game. For a while I was thinking like, yeah, I really play this a lot. Maybe this is just one of my favorite games. And then other times I'm like, there's not enough to it that it really belongs in my top 50. And I've sort of landed on maybe this should be a little bit lower on my list for now, but I still play it a lot. This is still the game that I probably played the most times solo. I don't know about most total hours spent. That might be a different game. But because it's virtually the same 1 to 4 players, or more than that if you get more than one box, because that's really preventing you from playing this 8 players or 12 if you have 3 boxes and so on. It's good. It's very good. It's very simple. The game is you shuffle a deck of cards that has each of the 10 digits, number digits in them. 0 to 9. In them twice each, you draw one, you use that tile. It's sort of shaped like that number, but also shaped as awkwardly as possible, and you can only place it on the front side and not the back side. And then you have to place them together in such a way that you can eventually stack tiles on top of them in such a way that it doesn't overhang any gaps, and it covers more than one tile beneath it. And only when it's up a level or up another level on top of that or up another level on top of that and so on is it worth any points. The first layer up from the table, the layer on the table is worth nothing. The first layer up from the table is 1 times the number. The second layer up is 2 times the number. So at that point, the 9 is worth an 18 at that point, and so on. So it's very simple to explain, very simple to play. I have obsessed about trying to get 100 points in this game, and I've peaked at about the low 90s. So I've never been quite able to do it. It's been mathematically proved to me that it can be done. I'm just not sure if that situation is going to happen because A, the cards would have to come out in a very specific way, and B, I would have to build those cards in a very specific way without knowing that the rest of the cards are arranged in that kind of optimal situation anyway. So I'm not sure I'm ever going to be able to break 100, but I kind of wonder if I break 100, will I just put this game away and feel like I never have to try it again, or do I want to keep going with it? I'm not sure. So for now, this one lands at 73, but it could go either direction, to be completely honest. Still a very good game, and still a game that is extremely easy to get other people playing. So that is my number 73. Number 9. My number 72 is another game with a number in its title, and again, I picked the wrong number to put this at, because this is 6 Nimmt, and it is up 13 spots. Its weight is a 1, so another very light game, and plays reasonably, probably 3 to 8 players, although I think it says 2 to 10 on the box, but don't listen to that kind of madness. 6 Nimmt is very simple. All you are trying to do is you're trying to not take points. You can play a card out, but everyone plays a card at the same time, and then they're arranged based on the rows. So if there's a 25, a 50, a 70, and an 80 out, you play a 26, it's going to go right next to that 25. You play a 49, well, assuming there was no other numbers between that 49 and the 26 that I just mentioned, it would go next to the 26 because that's the number that is closest to it that is underneath it. But you play a 51 or a 52, the 51 and the 52 will go next to the 50 and so on. So it's just a basic rule of how to arrange the numbers next to each other. But the problem is, if you play the 6th card in a row, you have to take all 5 previous cards, and those are worth points, which you do not want, and that becomes the new starting card of the row. If you play a card that's lower than the rightmost card of each row, you choose which row you want to replace, and you also take some points, because even if it's a card with just one, even if it's a row with just one card in it, and you play like a 3, and the lowest card out there is a 24, you take out the 103 at the top, and you still take the points for that. So you're just playing until someone gets 66 points, and then whoever has the lowest amount of points at the end is the winner. I've also played this on Board Game Arena, where they restructure the points. It's basically the same game, but instead you start with 66 points, and every card you take is points that deduct from your score, and whoever has the highest score at the end is the winner, and once someone gets to 0 or less, that's the end of the game. Mathematically, it works out to functionally the same game. It's just psychologically a different way of framing how it works. Really simple. There's always game of like, when do I play which card? Am I afraid that someone, if there's a row that has 4 cards in it, and you've got like the 4th card is a 94 and you've got a 99, how confident are you that someone won't play the 95, 96, 97, or 98? like a 4-player game. Like that's where the game comes in, is like, when can you get away with playing cards? When are you going to be forced to play cards that are going to force you to take points? I think it is a game that doesn't completely leave your destiny in your hands, because a lot will depend on the circumstances, the cards that you're dealt, and sometimes those can work against you, so there's not really a way to cleverly play yourself out of a situation. I think that can happen, and that's probably the only reason why this is as low on the list as it is. It's still a great game. I just really wish, if I have to play an ultralight card game, I would just personally prefer if luck was less of a factor. But I don't know if that's so much a knock against the game as just simply a reason why it's 72 on my list instead of something like 35. So that's Six Nimmt. Great game. Can recommend it to just about anyone. I think it plays in a very familiar way that you can play this with people who have no experience whatsoever in board gaming or card gaming, and they'll be just fine, because it's not very demanding, and the number of rules that you actually have to learn is pretty low. I mean, I basically taught you 2/3 of the game just by explaining it to you just now. So number 72, Six Nimmt. My number 71 is Indulgence, which is down one spot. Its weight is about a 3, and it plays 3 or 4 players. So, as some of you might be able to guess just from the player count, this is a trick-taking game, which often have fairly restrictive player counts at which they work. And this one has a theme, which they don't all do. And it's a Reformation-era theme of people vying for power in, I think, the Catholic Church. I'm guessing. I don't actually know, because this is a trick-taking game, and the theme is completely superfluous here. But I do like the evocative theme of it, given that I do dig dig things about, like, church history and things like that. It's a game in which you are trying to either accomplish something or prevent someone from doing the opposite. So what happens is you propose a rule. It's like, I will take all of the Medicis. Or no, rather, it'll be something like, don't take any of the Medicis, or you will have to pay me points, essentially. If I pick that, that's fine. And people are like, oh, shoot. Here's an option that's available to them. And they could say, actually, what's going to happen is this. I'm going to do the opposite of that. I'm going to sin against it, and I will take all of the Medicis. And if I succeed, I'm going to be rewarded fabulously. And if I fail, I still have to pay you. Terrific. I like that shoot the moon mechanism, and I like the fact that you have to commit to trying to do it just based on looking at your hand and having no other information. Do you think, based on the hand of cards that you have, that you can do the opposite of what I'm trying to forbid the rest of you from doing? And it also makes an interesting game for me, because I have to look at things and go, what are people in a bad position to do? Like, maybe I think they are going to end up with Medicis because I don't have a lot of Medicis, but not so good that they won't try to do the opposite and succeed at it, because that costs me as well. So it's a very thinky kind of setup for a game, and it's not my favorite trick-taking game. It is, I think, my second favorite trick-taking game, because I don't think I'm thinking of one in particular that I know is higher up, and I can't think of if there is a second one. But this is still really good, and I think if you have any affection for play a suit, follow a suit, deal with Trump, although Trump is very limited in its integration here. If you like that sort of game, this is a really good one, and it's a really clever take on it. I just might have one a little further up the list that is better. That's a stronger recommendation for me. Still, I really like Indulgence. It's a terrific game, and it is my last one of this list, my number 71. So that was my number 71 through 80, and as you can see, a lot of lighter games on that list, with the exception of Marco Polo 2, which is the token heavy game on this set of 10. But if anything, this 10 was my set of token light games that I also like, because there are going to be a lot of heavier games coming up later on the list. So let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.